Have you ever wondered, what if one day the person you looked down on the most turned out to be the one holding your fate in their hands? A legendary SEAL officer, dressed simply, was dragged from her car, pinned to the ground, and framed, all because of her skin color, to the applause of those who believed themselves untouchable. But they picked the wrong target. This woman was not just a victim. She was the worst nightmare those power-hungry oppressors would ever face. From behind the iron bars of a jail cell, Amara Knight quietly launched an unprecedented campaign to topple a rotten system, to expose the true faces of those who wore the mask of justice, and to turn today's humiliation into a wildfire that would burn away decades of corruption. But this battle would not simply end in victory or defeat. It would determine the fate of an entire city and her own destiny. Stay until the end, because you will witness a classic, breathtaking reversal, where justice is not just reclaimed, it is reborn, more radiant than ever. Please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to update our latest videos. Pale autumn sunlight filtered through the withering golden trees of Brookhaven. The small streets, the old wooden houses, everything looked just as peaceful as it had been when Amara Knight first left. But she knew all too well that this peace was only a facade. A silver sedan glided quietly down the main boulevard, its tires rolling steadily over the cracked pavement. Amara sat behind the wheel, her hands firmly gripping the steering wheel at the 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock positions. Perfect, just like every rule she had internalized since her first days in the Navy. On the passenger seat, a small framed photo swung gently with the motion of the car. Amara Knight in her sharp blue SEAL uniform, medals gleaming proudly on her chest, her eyes burning with fierce determination. This woman had once led top-secret missions, staring death in the face more times than she could count. Today, she was returning to Brookhaven. Not for a new medal, not for another military operation, simply for a vacation. 3 weeks of leave she had awarded herself after a nearly half-year-long mission in the brutal Middle East. Just a vacation, Amara told herself, glancing quickly into the rearview mirror, her instincts still taut as a drawn bowstring. But deep down, she knew the truth. Real warriors never truly have a vacation, because the most important battles aren't fought on the battlefield, they happen at home. Her car turned onto a narrow street, and memories flooded back. Her father sweeping floors at the Brookhaven Outreach Center, the joyous laughter of children. Her mother teaching piano lessons to underprivileged kids. Suddenly, red and blue lights flashed in her rearview mirror, ripping apart the somber afternoon air. Amara exhaled slowly, calmly pulling her car over to the curb, her sharp eyes unblinking, unsurprised. A police officer approached, his footsteps heavy, his gaze predatory. The badge glinting on his chest clearly read, Derek Mason, Brookhaven Police Department. With a voice as cold as an October wind, he barked, "There's a strange smell coming from this car. You, out, now." Amara tightened her grip subtly on the steering wheel, every military instinct she had screamed in warning. Her vacation was officially over. And destiny, the one she hadn't been looking for, was now pounding at her door, roaring her name, Amara Knight. Derek Mason strode up to the window, his hand resting casually on his gun, his eyes brimming with contempt. Not for anything Amara had done, but simply for the color of her skin. He rapped hard on the glass, barking, "Out of the car, now!" Amara lowered the window, her voice calm yet firm. "Officer, may I ask the reason for this stop?" Derek bared his teeth in a cold, twisted grin. "I smelled something suspicious. And I don't need a reason with someone like you." A chill ran down Amara's spine. Not from fear, she was no stranger to staring down bullets and death, but from the visceral hatred boiling in every word he spoke. Derek's eyes scanned the spotless interior of her sedan. There was nothing suspicious, but that wasn't the point. To him, the mere sight of a confident black woman driving a nice car down Brookhaven's main street was a thorn that needed to be ripped out. Step out, hands on the hood, no talking back. That wasn't the command of law, it was the abuse of warped power. It was a trap, laid for anyone he believed didn't belong here. Amara took a deep breath, silently counting 1, 2 dots, 3 in her mind. Every move she made was slow, deliberate, and executed with the flawless precision of military training. She stepped out, hands raised high, eyes steady, a silent, wordless defiance. But Derek wasn't satisfied. With a sharp shove, he forced Amara's face down against the cold metal of the hood, growling, "You think you're smarter than me. In Brookhaven, I decide who gets to speak." Murmurs began rippling from curious bystanders. Some raised their phones, starting to record. But Derek didn't care. He was used to the invisible shield of unchecked authority. And today, he was sure he would notch another petty victory. If Derek Mason had known, just known, who he was trying to crush, that this woman was Amara Knight, a warrior who had dismantled terror networks in the deadliest deserts on Earth, a living storm that had made even the most notorious figures tremble. If he had known, maybe today he would have thought twice about choosing his target. But Derek Mason did not know, and his crime had been captured. Not just on camera, but etched into the very cells of the woman he tried to humiliate. The trap Mason had laid today would become the grave he dug for himself. The body camera on Derek Mason's chest blinked red dash. But Amara knew perfectly well he had deliberately adjusted the angle, ensuring it captured only what he wanted. She remained still, her hands resting gently on the hood of the car, back straight like a mast in a storm. No resistance, no challenge, only a proud silence, one that burned Derek like fire under his skin. He needed an excuse, and then Derek Mason created one. With a fake stagger backward, as if she had attacked him, he suddenly shouted, "She hit me! She assaulted an officer!" The scream tore through the quiet. The curious gazes on the sidewalk instantly shifted into frowns, murmurs, suspicious whispers. Amara closed her eyes for a moment. She knew, this very second, would determine the path of justice from here on out. If she reacted, if she retaliated, even the slightest push, a wrong move, he would have exactly what he wanted. She did not respond. She did not scream. She did not curse. Only silence. A silence charged with power. Derek stormed forward, wrenching her arms behind her back with unnecessary force, twisting her wrist as if subduing a dangerous criminal. "You're under arrest for assaulting a police officer and obstructing law enforcement," he declared, his triumphant voice echoing down the street. The cold metal cuffs clamped tightly around Amara's wrists. The feeling triggered memories of dark missions, of being surrounded by enemies. Only this time, the enemy wore the uniform of the very nation she had sworn to protect. Derek dragged her across the sidewalk, past the silent gazes of onlookers. Some turned away, some took out their phones to record, but stayed at a distance, as if afraid to be involved. And Derek, he held his head high, parading his trophy like a victorious predator. No one knew. He had just handcuffed the greatest nightmare he would ever face. Inside the Brookhaven police station, the air was heavy as lead. Amara Knight sat upright in a cold metal chair, her hands still cuffed in front of her. The flickering fluorescent bulb above her cast a tired light over her face, a face that showed no trembling, no fear, only a calm, calculating alertness. In front of her, Derek Mason was eagerly recounting his fabricated tale of assault to the duty officer, Sergeant Patrick Vaughan. Amara didn't interrupt. She didn't object. She sat silently and observed. Every lie, every expression, every evasive glance, she committed them all to memory. First violation, no Miranda rights, no statement of her right to remain silent, no right to an attorney. Derek had arrested her like she was a contaminated object, with no regard for proper procedure. Second violation, the search of her car, conducted without a warrant. No witnesses. Mason and Vaughan rifled through her vehicle and miraculously found a small bag of drugs beneath the seat. A crude setup. Third violation, Derek's body cam had a mysterious blackout. Right at the moment he claimed she attacked him. Fourth violation, racist language, the sneers, the under-the-breath chuckles as Derek recounted his story to his fellow officers. Amara sat motionless, but in her mind the tactical map was already unfolding. Every lie, every planted evidence, every fabricated act. She was linking them together like wiring a timed explosive, bead by bead, fuse by fuse, waiting for the moment to ignite. Don't get angry, she reminded herself. Don't react. Rage can consume others, but for her it would be sharpened, cold, precise, and unstoppable. And in that moment, Amara understood with perfect clarity. This battle wouldn't be fought with weapons. It would be fought with patience, with truth. And she would be the one still standing when it was over. At exactly 7 p.m., inside the cold confines of a holding cell, Amara Knight requested her one phone call. Under the watchful eyes of Derek Mason and Patrick Vaughan, she picked up the old landline phone. No shaking, no hesitation. She dialed a string of numbers. Numbers etched into her memory. The emergency sequence reserved for covert crisis situations by the United States Navy Command. The phone rang only once. A deep, steady voice answered, "Mitchell speaking." Amara leaned in, shielding the receiver, her voice low, almost inaudible to anyone but the man on the other end. Night reporting. Code Delta Charlie 7. Unlawfully detained in Brookhaven. Objective: identify and dismantle local corruption network. Requesting activation of Level 1 Counter-Strike Protocol. A brief silence on the line. Then Colonel Ryan Mitchell responded, steady and commanding, like issuing orders on a battlefield. Authorization granted. Emergency response team is en route. Operational control is yours. Knight, do what you have to do. Amara hung up. Her face remained calm, as if the call had been nothing more than ordering coffee. But deep in her eyes, a flash of cold lightning sparked to life. Across town, the first wave of swift, silent actions ignited. Military legal units were mobilized. The Internal Operations Command ordered a sweep of the Brookhaven Police Department's records. The Federal Bureau of Investigation received an urgent coordination request from the Department of Defense. Within 90 minutes, a tightening net was being drawn around Derek Mason and his accomplices. And they didn't suspect a thing. Back inside the holding cell, Amara sat quietly. A faint smile flickered at the corner of her lips. The counter-strike operation had begun, and this time she wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for an entire forgotten community. A light rain fell over Brookhaven, soft droplets tapping on the roof of the aging jailhouse. In a quiet hallway, Leo Carter, a young officer, face still bearing traces of youth but eyes lit with defiance, walked slowly, his hand tightly gripping a small USB drive hidden in his palm. Leo knew that a single misstep could get him discarded like countless other colleagues who had seen too much. But tonight, he couldn't stay silent. Not after what he had just witnessed. With footsteps quiet as a cat's, Leo approached the holding cell where Amara was confined. Maintaining a composed expression, he unlocked the door and slipped inside, leaving only a slight gap. Their eyes met. No words were needed. Leo silently pulled the USB from his pocket and pressed it into Amara's hand, like passing a classified directive. His voice was hoarse, trembling with tension. "I've backed up body cam footage, internal reports, and radio logs. None of it lines up. The evidence, they framed you. I can't just watch this happen. Amara accepted the small device, her fingers gently tightening over Leo's, a silent signal of gratitude and acknowledgement. With just one look, Leo understood. This was no longer her fight alone. It had become their fight, for everyone who still believed in justice. Leo quietly stepped back, closed the door as if nothing had happened, and walked away. But in his heart, a conviction had been forged like steel. If it cost him his career to bring Derek Mason into the light, he would pay the price. In the corner of the cell, the faint glint of the USB flickered in Amara's hand. The data it held, the images, the lies, was fuel. And she, Amara Knight, would be the spark. That set fire to an entire decaying system. Inside the cold holding cell of the Brookhaven Police Department, Amara Knight sat in silence, her expression as calm as a still lake before a storm. But within her, an entire operation had already been quietly set in motion. Outside in the front office, Leo Carter, the last honest officer standing, played the part of a harmless guard. He exchanged a subtle glance with a man in a simple grey suit, Agent David Langston of the Federal Investigation Unit. The plan was ready. Objective: lure Derek Mason into committing a serious offense off-duty, where he could be caught red-handed, beyond the jurisdictional protection of Brookhaven PD. Strategy: an anonymous tip would text Mason, claiming that a video existed exposing how he framed Amara. The person holding the footage was said to be staying at a rundown motel on the edge of town, willing to deal in cash. If Mason took the bait, driven by greed and stupidity, he would walk right into the trap. 11:47 p.m. that night, room 214, a quiet corner of a seedy motel, rigged with hidden cameras and under full federal surveillance. Derek Mason showed up, hood pulled low, eyes darting. He had no idea that every single step was being captured in crystal-clear footage. The door was unlocked. Mason slipped in, flashlight sweeping the room. "Come out now, give me the file." He growled into the darkness. No one responded. Only a small blinking red light from a recorder stared back. Like the eye of a silent predator. Mason tore through drawers, flipped over furniture. He slammed cabinets, smashed the bed frame, trespassing, destruction of property. All recorded, every second time-stamped. Outside, a black FBI SUV waited. Agent Langston gave a single nod. The door burst open. Before Mason could even react, 3 agents stormed in and tackled him. "Derek Mason, you are under arrest for unlawful entry, destruction of federal property, and obstruction of justice." The cold steel of handcuffs snapped around his wrists. Mason's face twisted from panic to rage, screaming, "You don't know who I am. I've got people backing me. But this time, there was no one left to save him. Back at the station, Amara received the signal from Leo Carter. Just a simple message. The bait was taken. She smiled, only slightly. No celebration, no gloating. Just quiet confirmation that the dirty game was over. Tomorrow in court, Derek Mason would face justice. And the rotten system behind him would begin to crumble. Immediately after Derek Mason's arrest, a large-scale federal operation accelerated in silence. Agent David Langston and the federal team weren't just targeting Mason. Their real objective was the shadowy figure pulling the strings. Victor Steele, 12:30 a.m., temporary FBI, Tactical Command Center, Brookhaven. On a massive corkboard, files, photos, and financial data were spread out. Connected by crisscrossing red strings, Derek Mason, the corrupt cop. Patrick Vaughan, the complicit sergeant who cleaned up illegal case records. Victor Steele, a drug kingpin masquerading as a businessman, the real puppet master behind much of Brookhaven. Though still held in custody, Amara Knight continued to assist remotely. The intel she had gathered, drop times, routes, and handoff locations, all aligned perfectly with what the federal team had just uncovered. 1 a.m. Data analysis. Hidden payments to Mason, suspicious real estate under false names. Every transaction was unraveled piece by piece. The fatal blow, a damning audio recording from Patrick Vaughan's phone. Send Mason the next shipment. I told you already. Anyone stirs the pot, they get charged. Don't let some chickens wreck my pipeline. The voice, Victor Steele. A federal warrant was signed that very night. Victor Steele was now officially a subject of a high-priority federal investigation. The next morning, Brookhaven shook. News spread fast. Brookhaven police linked to drug syndicate, multiple officers under investigation. Broadcasts filled with dramatic images, Derek Mason being led away in handcuffs. The corporate headquarters of Victor Steele being raided. Sergeant Patrick Vaughan arrested for destroying evidence. Inside her holding cell, Amara smiled quietly. Not out of pride, but because, for the first time in many years, the darkness over Brookhaven had truly been torn open. A confidential note reached Amara via Leo Carter. Operation Phoenix has achieved its first phase. Prepare for the decisive trial. Elena Brooks. The game wasn't over yet. Tomorrow's courtroom would be the true battlefield, where every mask would be ripped off under the harsh light of justice. Early morning at Brookhaven Superior Court. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, citizens, and the angry eyes of the community all focused on the defendant's chair, where Derek Mason sat, beads of sweat forming beneath the very police uniform that now served as a prison garment. Amara Knight entered, her back straight, her gaze sharp and cold. Beside her was Eleanor Brooks, a military attorney, cold and precise, like a blade forged in fire. 9 a.m. The trial officially began. Prosecutor Samantha Cross, though ordered to tone it down, still attempted to revive the old narrative. The defendant acted on reasonable suspicion. Amara Knight's behavior posed a threat to officer safety. The courtroom erupted with scoffs and mocking laughter. No one believed that farce anymore. Elena Brooks rose to her feet, her voice resounding. Your Honor, today we will prove the one who broke the law, the one who fabricated evidence, the one who abused power to oppress, was Derek Mason. First piece of evidence, surveillance footage from a nearby store showed Amara displaying no resistance whatsoever. Medical analysis completely refuted the injuries Mason had faked. This, Eleanor said, holding up a close-up photo, is smudged makeup, not a bruise from an assault. Derek Mason began to pale. He squirmed in his seat, eyes darting around the room. Next, bank records revealed suspicious transfers from one of Victor Steele's shell companies into Mason's account. Internal recordings captured Mason bragging to Patrick Vaughan about how he dealt with those troublemaking black folks. The final blow, Elena gave a subtle nod. An FBI agent entered and handed a sealed file to the judge. Inside an arrest warrant for Victor Steele, along with a signed confession stating that Mason had been the lead enforcer for Steele's drug trafficking and witness suppression operation for 3 years. The entire courtroom fell silent. Derek Mason's face drained of color, red to ash. Amara rose to her feet. She looked directly at Mason. No hatred, no fury, only a cold, unshakable resolve. You thought you could bury justice with a badge and a gun. What you underestimated most is exactly what brought you down today. The judge struck the gavel. The court will proceed to sentencing, but effective immediately. All charges against Amara Knight dismissed. Derek Mason placed under arrest in this courtroom for the following: fabrication of evidence, abuse of authority, violation of civil rights, and conspiracy in a federal drug trafficking ring. Outside, a thunder of applause erupted. As he was led away in cuffs, Derek Mason looked back, eyes full of spite, but Amara simply watched in silence, with the calm of someone who had won, not out of revenge, but because the truth had finally been brought into the light for the entire world to see. Inside Brookhaven Superior Court, the atmosphere was taut as a drawn wire. In front of the public, evidence against Derek Mason was unleashed without mercy. Dashcam footage showed Amara motionless, directly contradicting Mason's claims. Forensic reports proved the evidence had been deliberately fabricated. A wave of past victims stepped forward, testifying about years of unlawful arrests and systemic abuse. At first, Derek Mason tried to remain composed, but when military attorney Eleanor Brooks coldly revealed a photo of him taking cash from Victor Steele, the drug kingpin captured by a federal sting operation, the last of his mask shattered. Enough. Derek roared, slamming his hands onto the witness stand, face flushed red. Just because she's wearing some damn military uniform, you believe every lie she tells? The courtroom froze. You really think trash like that deserves to stand equal to a white cop? His voice cracked under the weight of his own unraveling, revealing the deep-seated prejudice he had hidden for years. Amara Knight sat upright, her gaze cold and unflinching as it locked onto him. She said nothing. She didn't need to. The victory was already in her eyes. Judge Raymond Hart struck his gavel sharply. "Bailiff, restrain the witness immediately." Two federal officers rushed forward and slammed Derek to the cold marble floor. He thrashed and screamed, eyes bulging in desperation. "You'll regret this. I've got friends. I've got power." But cuffed and dragged from the courtroom, Derek Mason finally understood. His days as the predator were over. He was now just the prey. Camera flashes lit up the hallway as he was escorted out. His face splashed across every news outlet in the country. And inside that courtroom, Amara Knight, the woman he thought would bow in silence, sat steady, composed, unshaken, a warrior who had not just endured, but had won. After Derek Mason was escorted out, the Brookhaven Superior Court fell into solemn silence. Judge Raymond Hart adjusted his glasses, his voice ringing clear through the chamber. Given the overwhelming evidence that Officer Derek Mason deliberately fabricated evidence, abused his authority, and committed severe violations of civil rights, this court declares Amara Knight not guilty on all charges. A wave of emotion rippled through the courtroom. Colonel Ryan Mitchell gave a small, approving nod from the gallery. His eyes filled with pride. Eleanor Brooks placed a firm hand on Amara's shoulder, a quiet gesture, but one that spoke volumes. The judge continued, his tone now icy and resolute. This court also formally charges Derek Mason with the following crimes: criminal fabrication of evidence, abuse of power and obstruction of justice, and systematic violation of civil rights. Furthermore, the court orders a full review of all arrests conducted during Mason's tenure. A breathless stillness settled as the judge brought down the gavel for the final time. The corrupt machine that Derek Mason once manipulated with confidence now lay in ruins at his feet. News of the explosive trial at Brookhaven Superior Court spread like wildfire in a storm. The next morning, outside the Brookhaven Police Department, an unprecedented scene unfolded. Dozens of reporters, news vans, and civil rights organizations descended like a flood. The glass doors of the building reflected the relentless flashing of cameras. Like lightning bolts illuminating a crumbling, corrupt system. On the third floor, Sergeant Patrick Vaughan, Derek Mason's accomplice, sat frozen, his face pale. He had just received a summons from Internal Affairs. The subject line was short but chilling. Urgent internal investigation, civil rights violations, evidence tampering, criminal cover-ups. As he stepped out of his office, two federal agents intercepted him. "Sergeant Vaughan," one said coldly, dressed in a black suit. "You need to come with us, now." No handcuffs, not yet. But the looks from his fellow officers, cold, scornful, and full of contempt, were already the heaviest punishment. At that same moment, in the police department's main briefing room, a historic press conference was underway. The lead federal investigator, a black woman with eyes like blades, stood tall at the podium. We officially announced that 7 senior officers of the Brookhaven Police Department, including Sergeant Patrick Vaughn, are under investigation for complicity in abuse of power, evidence fabrication, and systematic civil rights violations. All individuals involved will be immediately suspended. Every case led by Derek Mason and Patrick Vaughn will be reviewed from the beginning. A long list of names appeared on the screen behind her. Each name, a stain that could never be erased. On the midday news, the anchor declared, "Brookhaven is undergoing an unprecedented reckoning. A shadow empire within law enforcement, once thought untouchable, is collapsing under the weight of truth." And across online platforms, a hashtag spread like wildfire: "Justice for Amara. Brookhaven Reborn." Meanwhile, in a cold, windowless interrogation room on the outskirts of the city, Patrick Vaughn sat alone. Each flicker of the buzzing fluorescent light above seemed to expose one more sliver of his shameful past. He knew with absolute certainty the end had come. No more protection, no more safety nets, no more power. Only the judgment he once believed he controlled, now crashing down on him with no mercy. 3 months after the justice quake shook Brookhaven, a special ceremony was held at the Brookhaven Outreach Center, once a forgotten corner of the city. Now it echoed with the joyful sounds of piano melodies, children's laughter, and hearts beating in rhythm with hope. In front of the newly built stage, rows of seats stretched under the sun, and a gleaming plaque was unveiled. Brookhaven Outreach Center, reborn for justice, hope for a new generation. Amidst thunderous applause, Amara Knight stepped onto the stage. Her Navy SEAL uniform now bore a simple blue jacket, the emblem of community mentors. No crown, no badge of power, only the deep respect reflected in every eye turned toward her. She lifted her head, eyes glowing as the microphone switched on. "I don't stand here as a hero," Amara said, her voice steady and clear, "but as a member of this community, one that has been wounded, but never broken. We're not rebuilding Brookhaven with concrete and steel alone. We are rebuilding it with truth, with justice, and with love." At the back of the crowd, children looked up at Amara with eyes full of wonder. Many of them wore T-shirts with the words, "Justice begins with us." That very day, the Community Justice Restoration Initiative, founded by Amara, officially launched. Its first programs included civic rights and legal self-defense workshops for youth, Brookhaven Rising scholarships for children impacted by social injustice, community abuse response training developed in partnership with leading legal organizations. That evening, as the sunset cast a fiery red across the skies of Brookhaven, Amara stood alone on the rooftop of the center, gazing into the distance. Out there, every street, every rooftop, every old gate once tied to bitter memories, now shimmered with warm light like stars, small but unbreakable. The breeze carried with it laughter, soft music, and a silent vow whispered deep in Amara's heart. Justice has risen in Brookhaven, and from this place we will rewrite history. Late afternoon in Brookhaven, the neon lights of Value Mart cast cold green streaks across the stained concrete floor. Between the grocery aisles, wearing a faded grey uniform, a man walked with his head down, pushing an old, squeaky mop. Derek Mason, once a man who made an entire community tremble beneath the authority of a silver badge, now just an anonymous janitor scraping by on minimum wage and pitiful glances. Every time Derek dragged himself past the shelves, the whispers would start again. "Is that him? He used to be a cop, right? Got busted for corruption and racism." each murmur cut like a sharp blade, etching through the arrogant shell he once wore like armor. But the worst part wasn't the words. It was the eyes. The way people looked at him, as if he were something foul, defeated, no longer worthy of space in their world. One day, a little black girl ran playfully through the aisle and slipped near where he was mopping. Her mother rushed over, her voice icy and furious. "Don't touch her." The pain in Derek's chest at that moment was greater than any courtroom sentence. He understood. The greatest loss wasn't freedom, wasn't reputation. It was the permanent loss of being seen as a decent human being. After serving time through a plea deal and community labor, Derek was required to report weekly to the parole office. His file was thick with charges, evidence fabrication, civil rights violations, perjury in court. Any employer who checked his record avoided him like the plague. Law enforcement, permanently banned. Private security, no one would take the risk. Only Value Mart remained, a place that needed floors cleaned, not integrity. At night, Derek would sit silently in his dingy ground-floor apartment, staring blankly through cracked windows. In the darkness, he could hear wind chimes from the unit across the way, where poor children sang songs of hope. That sound carved into him like glass. He once thought he was powerful. Now, even his self-respect was gone. One evening, while taking out the trash behind the store, Derek caught sight of a massive electronic billboard. Brookhaven Outreach Center. Justice has prevailed. On the screen, Amara Knight smiled, dressed in a humble uniform. Beneath the slogan, "For those who were oppressed and never gave in." Derek stood frozen beneath the freezing rain, the garbage bag heavy on his shoulder. The downpour washed the grime from the pavement. But no rain could ever wash away the stain on his life. He had lost, completely, forever. At dawn, a blanket of white mist covered the small cemetery on the edge of Brookhaven. Each blade of grass was soaked with morning dew. Each stone whispered quiet tales of time. In a secluded corner, before a modest headstone, Amara Knight knelt. Her military jacket fluttered softly in the gentle breeze. On the weathered stone were engraved the words, "David Knight, a man who believed in justice, even when the world turned its back." Amara placed her calloused hand gently on the cold granite, her fingers trembling, a rare sight. She closed her eyes, and the memories came rushing back. Her strong father guiding a tiny Amara past hateful stairs. Those late evenings where he patiently taught her to read the words, freedom, justice, and dignity. And that fateful morning when he silently wiped away tears, powerless in the face of injustice. Amara whispered, voice tight with emotion, "I did it, Dad." Tears welled, but she didn't cry. A warrior doesn't cry for the past. She cries for what must still be protected in the future. From inside her coat, Amara pulled out a small pin. The emblem of the newly reborn Brookhaven Outreach Center. On a deep blue background, a golden torch burned brightly. She planted the pin at the base of the grave, a vow in metal and light. "From today," Amara said, rising to her feet, her gaze set on the city now glowing through the morning haze. "Brookhaven will no longer be a place where justice is buried. It will be where justice is lit, for all." In the distance, the laughter of children echoed from the outreach center. Now a new beacon of hope. Children who once feared police, who once doubted the idea of justice, now ran freely beneath the flag of liberty, reclaimed through blood, tears, and unshakable resolve. In the final shot, the camera tilted skyward. A golden beam cut through the fog, like an eternal torch blazing across this land. Her name, Amara Knight, from this moment on, was not just the name of a person. It was the name of a symbol. Amara Knight never sought victory for herself. She didn't act for fame, nor did she rise for revenge. She fought for a better Brookhaven. for the children who hadn't yet learned what injustice meant, for the ones who had been trampled in silence, for the generations to come so they would never again have to bow to fear or inequality. That day, Amara didn't just reclaim her own freedom. She ignited a flame of justice, one that lit up an entire city. From the ashes of a broken system, a new hope rose. Because sometimes all it takes is one person brave enough, and the world must change. If you believe justice is always worth defending, let Amara Knight's story inspire others too. Share it so that flame never dies.